Hello, I'm Red Robot, and welcome to a particularly brutal challenge mode. Today I'm using the Pretty Scout loadout, in which the only weapon I'm allowed to use is the Pretty Boy's pocket pistol, but let's just call it the pocket pistol for short. Already, any of you that have picked up this weapon since its big nerf in the gunmetal update will know just how intense this challenge will be. But it gets even worse. I decided to combine the pocket pistol with two other weapons that provide some pretty negative passive effects to make me even more vulnerable and the challenge even more difficult. In my primary slot, I've got the Babyface's blaster. Sure, the additional speed can totally be helpful, but the pocket pistol's measly damage will mean getting that boost to maximum will be challenging. But the blaster's actually more here for its negative effect, a base speed decrease, and any boost you get is lost upon taking damage. It also removes some gained boost for performing a double jump, limiting my mobility, and removing my biggest advantage, my speed. If that wasn't bad enough, I also paired the pocket pistol with the Candy Cane, an interesting weapon which causes anyone you kill to drop a health kit. But as always, there is a cost, a 25% explosive damage vulnerability. This downside is so severe that it often leads to being one-shotted by rockets and grenades. The upside of dropping health packs barely matters because of what the pocket pistol does. You gain a, pathetic 3 HP for every hit with this weapon. But at yet another downside. Whenever you have the pocket pistol out, which is all the time with this loadout, you're going to be vulnerable to 20% more damage. This combined with the Candy Cane's already massive vulnerability makes you incredibly, ridiculously fragile. TF2 is a game that very carefully balances weapon damages and health. This loadout just completely breaks that balance, pushing an enormous number of damage sources that Scout can usually survive into a one-shot. And if that wasn't bad enough, the pocket pistol itself is a pathetic weapon, with a huge 25% slower firing speed. As I stated before, the health on hit isn't enough to make it useful, and the other benefit, I use this term incredibly loosely, is the fact that you take no fall damage while you have it out, which would be useful maybe with the Babyface's blaster, but in general, Scout has a double jump, so it doesn't really make any difference. In order to use this loadout, I had to play extremely conservatively. Damage sources I could usually shrug off became deadly, so it's important to choose your fights carefully as the Pretty Scout. The only enemies you'll be able to pick off with your pocket pistol will usually be the ones that are already damaged or stragglers fleeing combat. I had to use whatever meager speed boost I could force out of the blaster in order to round up and execute any players that were showing some signs of weakness. You gotta be not too attached to that boost though, since in many situations it's better to abuse the double jump to get to high ground or avoid damage, forfeit your speed in order to survive. No matter how fast you are, your damage vulnerabilities will make even the tiniest of rocket splash shred all the way through your health and set your speed back to 0 anyway. As we all know, sentries have always been a solid scout counter, but now you're almost 100% useless against them. Your best bet is to be as annoying as possible, hopefully distracting the engineer away from his building or that spy decloaking behind him, and rely on your team to take it down. Luckily, the teams are on were mostly decent, and just the act of me peppering a sentry could grab their attention and pulled focus fire towards the engineer. Soldiers and demo men are a greater threat to you than ever before, and it's like you're playing in a 100% crit server while fighting them, so you have to be extremely careful. Kiting your enemies at a distance while slowly pelting them with bullets is probably the way to go. Scouts are another huge problem. If you don't catch them by surprise with a large amount of boost, chances are you'll be slow and vulnerable enough for them to clean you up with pretty much no effort. Well, this clip was pretty funny. This heavy, still marked for death after using his gloves running urgently, actually doesn't manage to deal a single point of damage to me at all. I have no idea how that happened. Must have been getting some pretty bad luck that day, I'd say. Heavies are kind of a major pain because their bullet cone is so wide, it's pretty much impossible for them to miss you, well, in most situations. So you lose all of your boost when fighting them, which is really frustrating. Here's an example of when using a double jump to lose your boost is beneficial. I see the demo's got a shield, so he can't stick up on me. Standing up on the high ground makes myself really difficult to hit with grenades, and that way I can just finish him off with my pistol, no problem. It's pretty funny. Sometimes when your aim isn't quite on point, your damage is just so low that you can get into some pretty awkward situations where you and your enemy are kind of just both firing at each other, but no one's dying. Especially with a weapon that fires as slowly as the Pretty Boys, like, extended fights just become such a snore fest. I'm pretty sure using if I used my melee weapon and hit people with the candy cane, I would have done so much more damage and gotten so many more kills. It's just, the Pretty Boys is just terrible on pretty much every level. Having a medic with you to do this strategy doesn't actually help out much at all, because even at like 150 health, 180 health, you're still going to die in a few rockets anyway. You take so much damage, it's ridiculous, that it pretty much doesn't even matter. One interesting thing that happened as a result of using this loadout is that when I went back to normal play, I was actually a whole lot more evasive. After having to avoid damage or just die instantly, it made me able to sort of play a lot more safe. You get into sort of that mentality when you've got 125 health as scout. You know, I can take a rocket, I can take a grenade, I can take a sticky, and you get into situations that are really risky when you kind of don't need to. Using a weapon that gives you as much vulnerability as the candy cane or the Pretty Boys actually kind of helps you get out of this kind of suicide scout, go and get as many kills, keep pushing until you die mindset, whereas you're forced to play really carefully with the Pretty Boys. And that looks like we'll be wrapping it up there. This challenge was a whole lot of fun. Of course it was difficult. It was actually not as bad as I was expecting. I managed to get on the top 3 scoreboard quite a few times, just because if you can avoid that damage, the damage vulnerabilities don't even matter. So if you're evasive enough, if you're clever enough, you can get away with a whole lot that you really shouldn't. Anyway, that's all I got for you right now. I'll catch you guys next time.